All right. Good evening. Welcome to episode 4 of what we're now calling drumroll, the cheap seats with Pat and Kevin. I'm sure if you're paying attention, we sent out via social media just an update of a rebrand of the with the radio show, and we're gonna kind of have it across all social media. So it is Wednesday, October 2nd, 2024. I am joined by the one and only voice of Rhode Island high school football, Mr. Kevin Callahan. Kevin, how are you?
This, I'm doing great, Pat. And there's just so much competition out there,
Well,
on Rhode
hey,
Island High School football.
you got to start somewhere, right? I had the
I think
privilege
there is a
of
station in Newport that does
yeah,
it.
I had the privilege of taking in the Boroville Pilgrim game and seeing you in action, which was pretty cool. So
It's
all right,
tough to do
so
those games sometimes when it's a blowout like that.
yeah, there's a lot of space to fill,
Yeah,
but
we
you guys
saved
do a
some
good job.
material when we saw the game heading in a certain direction. We saved first half and halftime material for the running clock fourth quarter.
Yeah, well, at least they do run the clock, which is good.
Yeah, and we talked
Um,
about RPI, fun stuff.
so let's see, uh, Major League Baseball playoffs. I'm sorry, I'm
Red
looking
Sox are
up. I
doing it
have
right all season.
Yeah, right. I hit my desk. I have a whiteboard in front of me, and I wrote a bunch of stuff down. But now I realize I'm looking up. But yeah.
Well, the home
So
teams
had
aren't
they
doing
gotten
good,
in, they would
Pat,
have
and
started on the road,
that I
and it
know.
looks like the road teams swept the playing games, or whatever you want to call them, the wild card
Uh,
games. Detroit
Frozen on
over
my end.
Houston, 2-0, and Kansas City over Baltimore. Um, at the end of the day, I think it comes down to pitching once you get this far along. And Kansas City uh, starts out pretty hot, and they get some good 1 and 2 starters. And Kevin has gone blank on me, so I'm going to keep things going until he gets back on here. And Detroit, I think, is just the typical team getting in and getting hot at the right time. So they both move on. Detroit will match up against Cleveland next, and Kansas City will face the Yankees. And then over in the National League, and he's back over in the National League. Kevin, just to re-hit it, I just basically said, Kansas City, Kansas City has some pretty good quality arms at the top of their rotation, which helped them out. I think they won the first game was like 1-0, right? And I didn't see the second game, but, it really came down to pitching, and then Detroit just seems to be a team that, not yeah, not unlike, Arizona last year, who kinda came in the 8th seed, right? 8th or 6th, and got hot at the right time, and then they get all the way to the World Series. So, in the National League, they're playing tonight. I think the Mets and Brewers are playing now. Mets lead that series 1-0, and San Diego won last night over Atlanta. Atlanta had a tough turnaround. They had to win that second game of the doubleheader, and then fly out to the West Coast. And San Diego got one hell of a start out of Michael King, who Bishop Hendricken. He's a Rhode Island native, class of 2013. He was in the deal. I want to say he was in that deal, the Soto deal. Was it Soto who went to New York from San Diego? Yeah, so there was like they got 5 players in that deal, and he was one of them, and he pitched what did he pitch last night? 7 innings. Yeah, he pitched 7 innings, gave up 5 hits, he struck out 12. And he was on fire. So yeah, it was pretty good. So, um, yeah, it's that time of year. So I don't know what the Mets, I was kinda paying attention to that, a little bit earlier. Yeah. So So, Mets are up, yeah, Mets are up 3-1, bottom of the third. So they win this game, they move on. They'll move on to face Philly. Um, Atlanta, yeah, I mean, yeah, San Diego's the only home team that won. So and we'll see what happens tonight. It and well, in Atlanta was, I mean, it was like a bullpen game for them. I think the starting pitcher went like 3, then they brought in the next guy, so, unfortunately, they had Sale went down. He's not even on the roster right now. They left him off it's only a 3-game series. So it's unfortunate, and, I didn't follow him, like, as much as I, probably could have, but I think he was fairly healthy all season as a pitcher, yeah. No. Mhm. Yeah, no, I don't disagree. Um, but, I didn't hear I listened to a little bit of the kinda like the closeout of the season with Cora and, the front office guys and, you know, who knows? I don't know. It just it's disheartening to see the fact that they just haven't spent the money, they haven't gone out and made the moves. It doesn't sound like they're gonna go out and make any big time moves either, but unless something changes. Yes, I mean, Sam Kennedy's the one who came out, and he's the only one that really talked, like, about it almost emotionally, like, "Hey, we're the Boston Red Sox. We can't be that team that is, we have to shoot for 88 to 90 wins. We don't wanna be a middle of the road. We're looking to win divisions, make the playoffs, and make noise." It's like, "All right, well, you haven't done anything to, like, kinda, like, do that, though." So, um, right. Yeah. Well, yeah, 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 yeah. I mean, that's basically what Cora came out and said. I mean, outside of they definitely had some players step up, but they got to get better on the defensive end. I mean, you can't be second last. If I think they were second last in defense, and yeah. So I mean, that's you can't even be in the conversation. I mean, you have no you just don't even have any reason to even believe you're a playoff team if you're second to last in as a defensive team. So yeah, Kevin's having technical difficulties tonight, so we're gonna we'll go there. We'll wait for him to get back on. So he should pop in and out. Where he's having some internet trouble, but um, yeah, the Red Sox are just to have a defense that bad, and then and almost to be where they were is I mean, I guess you could look at it the other way and go like, well, they were so bad defensively that they shouldn't even have been in the equation, and they were. So um, you know, it is what it is. It'll be interesting to see how they move forward. Where they look to attack. Obviously they get some pitchers that aren't going to be back. I think Pavetta's gone. Jensen. There's some rumors out there that he probably wants to end his career in L.A. Um, Kevin is back.
And Pat, it says it just started recording again. Is this going to be split into two sections?
No, probably you probably just started recording again, so it
That's
should be
fine.
fine.
My
It should be fine.
apologies for
No, it's all right.
people.
We'll
At least
we'll
you're
work
going
through it.
smooth.
We'll work through it.
So
Hey,
yeah,
this is only episode 4.
yeah,
So we'll upgrade some stuff
yeah.
and we'll figure it out. But
Hey, we've upgraded the Hockey Night in Attleboro studios.
this is true.
We've built extra rooms. We've added extra furnitures. We've added extra TVs
I
and
got I
refrigerators.
added
So
some shirts up behind me.
more
I got
shirts.
my autographed Gustav Nyquist shirt when he
Nice.
was in Detroit.
Not a
Um,
Red Wing fan, but I do like the shirt. Team
he's a
USA, I like it.
UMaine guy. I
Yeah,
have my brother had some connections at UMaine with
nice.
their hockey boosters. And then I got obviously my Team USA shirt. I moved the Mayo shirt over since we're not talking about the Patriots. Anyway, we'll get there.
Speaking of UMaine, you know any other goaltenders from UMaine that is in the news recently? Jeremy Swayman.
Hey, there it is, Kevin, the voice of Rhode Island high school football with a perfect segue, right? So,
Yeah,
um, the Boston Bruins. Let's touch upon the preseason.
sure.
Well, actually, let's start with the Swayman. So,
Okay.
so, uh, so it's crazy. I think it's crazy. The Bruins had their press conference the other day. They had Sweeney, Naily, I think Jacobs, and
Charlie
and
Jacobs, yeah.
yeah, and I think that I don't know if
Was Montgomery there?
Montgomery. I think Montgomery might have been there.
Yeah.
And obviously, the biggest questions that anyone have are about the goalie, right? Everything
Right.
else is going to take care of itself. Marchand's back. Elias
Yep.
Lindholm was out, and now we know why he was out. His wife had given birth to I don't know if it's their first child, but she gave
Yeah.
birth, so he missed
Yep.
a, a
A
a
couple
few
of games.
sessions of preseason,
Yep.
and which is fine. Um, but obviously the questions are about Swayman. Where do things stand? Where do they not stand? And I, it doesn't surprise me that Cam Neely came out the way he did and basically said, you know, I don't even know what he
Uh,
said.
we've given
Basically
him
said
64 million reasons to play here.
64 million reasons why he should be playing for the Boston Bruins right now. So
Right.
basically saying we offered him $64 million over 8 years.
Yes. Since
And
then, it's been refuted a bit. I forget the gentleman's name up in Canada. I think he writes for TSN. And basically, it's because the agent came out and said they did not offer 64, and it comes out as 62 and a half. They offered 7.8 million. The Bruins did, and it came, which
yeah.
comes out to 62.4. So,
So
and
yeah, and I
so
heard someone today basically saying that he initially came out and asked for Charlie McAvoy money. So 8 at 9.5,
right.
which he's
I
not going to
hadn't
get.
heard that, but
So I
he's not going
forget
to get.
who it was. I was listening to something today, and they came out, and he basically, I forget who it was. They were playing it on some radio station, but it was a guy who does a podcast who people pay for his podcast. So he's like, and he has sources, and he said he was asking for Charlie McAvoy money. I think they've settled somewhere in around 8.8, and the Bruins were at 7.8, and now they're saying they're at 64, but they were probably at 62. And can they get something done? I don't know. But when someone like Cam Newton comes out and makes a comment like that, to me, it says that they're probably looking to move him now. And
It's
that,
possible. I just looked up Charlie McAvoy, and 78 years, 76 million, AAV of 9.5
yeah.
per year.
And so that basically
Yeah,
that's where he said he came out. And they specifically asked him, I think it was DuPont who was asking the question, and basically was like, well, is he looking to try to reset the market for goalies? And Cam Newton said, absolutely. That's exactly what he's doing, but we don't feel that he's comparable to those guys,
so
which he's not.
he's not, and I agree. He hasn't played more than 44 games in a season. Charlie McAvoy, just to compare the two, I know it's tough to compare a defenseman and a goalie,
Yeah.
but McAvoy plays every game. Swayman has played every other game in his career, done very well. So I honestly think, take the salary cap out of it for a second. One, I think they can only offer him about 8.6 anyway. Then they're at the cap
That's what they
for
have.
this coming year. So they can't even go above 8.6 this year, I don't think. But let's pretend that
not
doesn't
without making a
exist.
move.
Oh, not without making a move, exactly. So pretend the salary cap doesn't exist for a second. You're not going to give him 10 million for 8 years, 80 years. All right, so maybe you go higher this year, but you go lower on the number of years. It's in which case, all right, give him a 3-year deal. I don't think Swayman would go for a 3-year
He doesn't want
deal,
a bridge deal,
based on what I'm hearing.
and they don't want to give him a bridge deal.
Right. You're right, because he did that was what arbitration was, basically. It was a bridge.
Yeah. Essentially, it's like, well, we could do a bridge deal. We'll give you 2, but there's no guarantee he's going to stay after that either. So,
right. So 8 and 64 or 8 and 62.4 puts him, and I heard this on one of the sports stations up in Boston, puts him as a top 6 goalie in the league. And the 5 in front of him are all 55 to 60 game guys that have proven themselves. And again, coming into this, I'll go back a couple of years ago. I didn't want Allmark. I wanted Swayman and Vladar to be the goaltending tandem, with Swayman ultimately taking over. Allmark, wow, surprised the heck out of me.
Yeah.
I did not think he was going to be that good. Wow, what a great goalie tandem. Ended up working out overall pretty well. But for Swayman, he still hasn't shown that he can do it the whole year. I don't necessarily, blame him in the playoffs. So he got into the second round. This is supposed to be the next step year. But here's the thing, Pat. December 1st is coming up quickly. I know he's got the same agent that had a guy from the Maple Leafs, Nylander, hold out to December 1st, then signed a big contract. I don't know what happens if he doesn't sign on December 1st, other than I know he can't play, but how could he possibly think he would come out with a better contract when the Bruins continue to hold his rights. I honestly think he's getting some bad advice. I mean, not knowing the situation, how this will all play out ultimately, but he's with less than 60 days until he can't play in the NHL this year. uh, I think he's playing with fire on a very generous offer. You listen to Felger, you listen to some of the other guys over on EEI. I mean, when you have all the talk shows in agreement that Swayman's
Right.
being an idiot for turning this stuff down. I mean, he's
Or
getting
he's just
bad
getting
advice
bad
somewhere.
advice. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's
and a
so
lot of
maybe you
people
should
have
take
said,
the 8.5. Yeah, take the 8.5 or take 8 or 7.8. And then you know what? Take less years at 3 or 4 years, play yourself even better. The ceiling is going up in the NHL. The salary cap is getting more and more every single year. They anticipate it going up again next year. So take a shorter term, make yourself an unrestricted free agent in 2 or 3 years, and then go hit the market then as a 28-year-old. I don't know. Maybe that's the happy medium, because as an 8-year contract brings him to age 33. Because I think he's 25 right now.
yeah.
So,
Yep. And that's the so I don't know which, again, I don't know. I've listened to so much this week. I listened to the Spit and
right,
Chicklets guys. I've ever, and there was rumors about, the trade happened because both of them wanted to play at least 55 games, which obviously can't happen.
right,
So the Bruins said, ultimately we want Swayman because he's younger.
right,
Um, and that's where I think that's where their commitment had been all along. I think they knew when they drafted him that he was the next kid who was going to come up
right,
through, and he projected out the way they thought he would, but he just hasn't gotten to that level. The last goalie that was in this situation as an RFA was Vasilevsky, and at that time he was coming off of a Vezina and Stanley Cup, and he got
right,
his contract, which makes complete sense. I still don't
right.
think that any goalie is worth that much money, but when you're a guy like Vasilevsky, who is like, I mean, I don't even know what his numbers were that year, but he had played like 60 games. His goals against average was like low twos, and his save percentage was like 9.3. It was like off the charts. So
Right,
it makes sense. But for a guy who hasn't played 40, 55 games or even 50, to like step up and demand to like reset the market for goalies,
right,
it's like, where are you coming from with this?
right. Exactly. So
And again, I think the Bruins really should have just, you know, I think they made a good faith effort to say, hey, we're not going to go back to arbitration. We get it. There was a lot of hurt feelings last year. We could have done it.
yep,
We could have signed you to a 2-year deal at whatever the arbiter said, and it probably would have been closer to 6.5, maybe 7, but that's it. I mean, he would have been
yep,
gone. He would have went from like 3.7, 3.85 to probably, under 7, and they could have locked him up for 2 years.
right,
And then he was probably definitely leaving anyway. So the good faith effort was like, hey, we want to sign you. We want to sign you a long-term contract. And then he comes back with 9.5. It's like, well, and now it's
yeah,
almost like the leverage for on their side is like, well, we want this. Well, in order for that to happen, they would have to move someone.
right,
Imagine them doing that, and then it's like he comes in after sitting out, and now it's like, well, we had to move a player just to get you to come back, and because you wanted to be paid the top goal in the league, but you haven't really put up the
See,
numbers long enough. So that's the
that's
only
like you.
issue I have with it.
What you start risking disrupting the clubhouse, the
Yeah,
locker room, which is never
yeah,
good in any sport.
yeah,
You don't play well. Now you're upsetting the fans at the Garden, and it could. And now the other thing is, and I was just looking this up. You got Bob Asenza, who's been the Bruins goalie coach since 2003. All right, so for the last 21 years, he's had basically since then his main goalies Andrew Raycroft and Tim Thomas. I'm going kind of like year by year right now.
hmm
So Tim Thomas and Andrew Raycroft were there for quite a while. Obviously, Tim Thomas, leads them to the Stanley Cup in 11. But Tim Thomas is not like a Hall of Fame goalie. He got on a good run. Then you had Tuukka Rask after Thomas left. With a series of backups, and Tuukka played 70 games back in the 2015 season. Goalie save percentage of 92. Tuukka 91, 92, with a handful of backups. Tuukka always a good goalie, fundamentally sound. Save percentages never really dipping below 91, 92 on the season. You know what? It could be a situation, Pat, where we talked about it briefly a couple weeks ago. We may have mentioned it last week. But sign and trade and leave, and now you really pick up things. If Asenza is the Dante Scarnecchia guy, survives all the coaching regimes. He's been the goalie coach. Apparently doesn't want to be a head coach anywhere. Very happy being the goalie coach and with the Bruins organization. He turned Linus Ullmark, coming from the Buffalo Sabres, into a Vezina winning goalie. Why? Because the defense wasn't that great in front of him in Buffalo. Hello, Ottawa goalie. How do you say his name? Korpisalo. Jeez. Coming out of a bad defensive situation in Ottawa, now has a much better defense in front of him. He's already been branded the number one goalie. Fine. I'm not a big Brandon Bussy guy from what I've seen in the preseason. Fine. Give him 20 games, whatever. Swayman's not the guy. Korpisalo is okay. Here we go, goalie Bob.
And he's played.
Let's make another Vezina
He's
winner.
played a decent amount of games
for your resume
when he was in Columbus.
It's my third rant.
You're frozen again.
I'm frozen again.
Korpisalo. I believe he played at least 55 games when he was in Columbus. So let me pull up his stats real quick, because that's something you got to consider. I mean, he played he played 55 games last year in Ottawa, so obviously 3.27 with a 0.89, so that's low, and he played roughly 28 to 38 games with Columbus. Kevin's back. This is all filler. I said, let me look up Korpisalo's stats. He played 55 games last year. Now, granted, it was he had 3.27. And Kevin, we had a conversation last week after our show where I just was looking up, back in the day, and a goalie like basically we started talking about, like, you don't have to be this, like, you don't have to have a phenom goalie to win, and it's been proven, right? But if you look back at even the days of the Edmonton Oilers, Grant
Fuhr,
his numbers were, I wouldn't even have thought they were as bad as they were. I mean, his
very
goals against
pedestrian
average was high threes, and his save percentage, I think he only had three or 4 years total in his career where it was over 90%.
And one of them you said was with St. Louis. Which I don't even remember him on St. Louis.
The last 4 years he was on St. Louis.
Yeah. He was on those high-powered Oilers teams, and his save percentage, I think you even quoted him to me, were like 88%.
You get those teams with Gretzky and Messier and Curry and Coffey and all those guys, and they're going to put up. There's Kevin.
There I am.
Kevin, I'm telling you, you got to get rid of the dial-up.
It's my flip phone. It's my.
We'll get you up there. So let me pull up Grant Fuhr's numbers. So he played with Edmonton from basically 81 to 90, or 81 to 91.
Right.
In his career, his NHL career numbers, his career goals against average is 3.38. and his career save percentage is .887. He's a
Right.
Hall of Fame goalie, right?
Hall of Fame goalie. Because how many rings
Hall
did
of
he win
Fame
with
goalie.
Edmonton? 5?
I probably he won 1, 2, 3, 5.
Yep.
I do like the hockey DB for stats because they have all that in there. So
Okay.
actually, no, he won 4 with Edmonton. He did win a championship in the WHL. So that's what that trophy is. With
Oh,
the
with the Oilers
Victoria
or
the
Western
Victoria
Hockey?
Cougars of the Western Hockey League.
Oh, okay.
He won the championship, whatever that's called. I don't think it tells you, but
Yeah. And for a
and then he
second, I thought
won
you meant the WA. I thought you meant the WHA.
the oh
And
yeah, no. And then he won
which
83, 84, 84, 85, 86, 87, 87, 88. Those
you know
years. But
Gretzky was in the WHA
oh yeah.
with the Oilers.
When he was
But they were
young. He was
yeah,
like a
yeah.
teenager, wasn't he? Yeah, he was like
Yeah, he must have been
15.
17 or 18 at the time because
Yeah.
I think it was only 1 year,
He,
and then the next
he
year they merged with the NHL, and Edmonton was
I will give him
1 year.
credit. In 87 and 80, 87, 88, he played 75 games.
Yeah, that's when they beat the Bruins.
75 games. He played over 4,300 minutes. His record, he was 40 and 24 and 9, 3.43 goals against average, .881
Yeah, because
save
he knew they
percentage.
were going to score 6 or 7. They probably even said
Yeah,
to him, "Hey, don't give up more than 4, because we got you for 5." He
but
probably said,
like
"Okay."
literally, I mean, I remember looking at this, going, oh my god, like literally, the only years he had a plus 90% save percentage was after 95.
Yeah.
And you know what
So
happened? I think I'm pretty sure the goalie pads, the equipment and the goal size changed that like between that season.
and I think you also had the invention of the Lou Lamoriello New Jersey Devils neutral zone trap, which
Yeah,
brought
that's
scoring from a high right
yeah.
down. And then your 7-3 games became 3-2. And really slowed down
I
the
mean,
game of hockey. They've opened things up a bit since, but
he didn't get much over that. I mean, his save percentage was .903, .901,
right.
and that was, I
But his
mean,
goals against him that
I
came
think
down
that's
because everybody's goals against came down.
well, his goals against, his goals against went 94, 95. It went from 4.04. He didn't play much those last. I didn't even know he played in Buffalo.
Well, he
He
really hung
played
around, huh?
Edmonton, then he went to Toronto for 2 years, then he was in Buffalo for 3, then he went out to the Kings, and then he finished 4 he did 4 years in St. Louis, and he finished with Calgary, 99, 2000. He played 23 games in Calgary,
Wow.
3.83. He was 5-13 and 2 with a .856 goals against average, save percentage. Sorry. So, but he's like one that I just looked at and went, I mean, obviously you have all that firepower in front of you. It doesn't, like, you could put me in that and they probably still would have won games, right? But I mean, here's a guy who's in the Hall of Fame and he had basically like, I mean, that is probably low end goaltending stats currently. If you looked at today's goalies and you said 3.38 and 0.887, that's probably like the lower third of all of them. So it's interesting to see that. And, obviously, and I think teams can win. And we've seen that, like, a goalie like Billington for St. Louis, who was like, basically lent out to Providence. They gave him back when St. Louis needed him because there was some injuries, and he comes in, and next thing you know, they're playing in the Stanley Cup, and he caught fire. But he's a subpar goalie. There's not very often that the Vezina winner is the goalie who is in the in the Stanley Cup or winning in the playoffs. It's really because that's all based on regular season, and those goalies tend to, you know, Obviously Bobrovsky played well last year. But anyway, I thought it was interesting. I just pulled him up and I reached out to Kevin. I
Talk
reached out
about
to you.
Grant.
Yeah. And so it just kind of
Yeah.
reinforced what I was saying about, like, you don't have to be this top five goalie to win the Stanley Cup. Like, teams can catch fire, goalies can catch fire.
When
Certainly.
when Comcast was freezing me out again, I was looking up former Bruins goalies, and interesting to see the goals against average up until the mid '90s, of the main guys, and going back to the '70s, like in Cheevers and Gilbert and those guys, um, goals against was up around 2.8, 2.9. But save percentage, even then, though, was still around 91, 90, 92, in that range. And then around the mid 90s, Blaine Locker, when, comes in with a 2.4. And all of a sudden, you start to see these 2.4s, 2.5s, 2.3s. But the save
Yeah.
percentage has been roughly the same, maybe a little bit. It always kind of fluctuates a little bit. But again, I think the increased pad and the neutral zone trap was a deadly combination to take away the high flying NHL. I think things are a little bit back to
I
better
mean,
with the
you look
NHL.
back,
You see in scoring.
Pete
Mm-hmm.
Peters back in the 80s. I mean, his first
Yeah,
season, I think it was his first season, 82, 83 with the Bruins. I mean, he had 62 games and he had a 2.36, phenomenal,
yeah,
.904 save percentage. And
right.
those are
And
like, that's like the anomaly.
right. He tied Cheevers that year for like 33 consecutive games without a loss, because they had ties back then.
Yep.
And yeah, he tied Cheevers 33, and I remember that because in the middle of the streak, he uh, he left a game losing 5-0, and Mike Moffat came in, and the Bruins tied it up 5-5, and they lost 6-5, and Mike Moffat got the loss.
It's funny. You look back, and I love doing this, and maybe this is a perfect
Yeah,
time to do it, like on the podcast. Just, you go down this rabbit hole. I used to like look up like how like where players went and what they turned into. Like, oh, we traded away
right.
this player, but he turned into these three and this draft pick, and who they end up drafting, and then you just
Oh yeah.
start seeing it. But like
Follow the branches of the tree of
the
the
trail,
trade.
yeah. But I'm just looking at
Well,
it's hockeygoalies.org and just see how many goalies, like like they have like literally like 84, 85, they had four goalies. 85, 86, they had five. Pat Riggin,
Yeah,
Doug Keens, Pete Peters, Bill Ranford, Cleon
Dougie Keens.
Daskalaskis. And they all played. I mean, obviously Daskalaskis played two. Ranford, and again,
Yeah, the
there's
main
another
goalies
guy,
were
right?
Riggin and
Ranford.
Keens that year.
Like, we had him before
I lost you
and then we
again.
send him out to Edmonton and he comes back and haunts us. 86, 87, Bill Ranford,
It's not the same.
he had a 3.33 and again 891. So yeah, I guess it's just a different era of hockey. But even like the late 90s, Reggie Lemelin 2.93, 889, Andy Moog, obviously late in his career. His goals against average 3.22, 0.88877. 91, 92, 3.23, same thing, 887. That's Andy Moog, Matt Del Judas, Rajon Lemlin, Danielle Berthiaume. I remember him as a draft pick. Andy Moog, John Blue, Reggie Lemlin, Mike Bales. Jesus. He only played one game. And then John Casey, Vince, 893, 94. John Casey. Whew. I think they got him from, I think he might have been on Hartford. John Casey. 2.88, 0.881 playing locker. 95, 96, they get Bill Ranford back. And that's when they got Billington. Craig Billington, 95, 96. That's right, because I think they drafted him. Rob Tallis, Jim Carey, Scott Bailey, Tim Shovelday, Paxton Schaefer. Anyway, I could go on and on all night. I love doing this. I love going down the rabbit hole. Is Andrew Raycroft, who they drafted 2000, 2001. He comes on the scene with a 2.96, 0.89. The next season, he plays one game. Steve Shields, Andrew Raycroft. So, yeah, 0304, Andrew Raycroft was out of sight. 2.05 with a 926 in 57 games. And here's where I've mentioned it a couple times where, for a kid like Swayman to potentially get to December 1st and not play and have to take a season off. Andrew Raycroft decided in the 04-05 season when the NHL had the lockout, I'm fairly certain he decided not to play anywhere where NHL players could have gone and played anywhere. Some of them went over to Europe, some played up in Canada. He decided not to play. So he took a full season off. The next season he came back and he played 25 games. Oh, no, sorry. He played 30 games. His goals against average was 3.71 with a 0.879, which opened the door for Tim Thomas because that's when Tim Thomas came up. They had a bunch of goalies that year. Tim Thomas, Andrew Raycroft, Hannu Toivonen, who again was a draft pick, Jordan Sigalet, Craig Anderson. Craig Anderson, I don't think he played a game, but yeah, he has no stats, but he must have been on the roster at some point. But that was a year. It was, and basically I said it would be career suicide, and it certainly was. I think then they ended up, but they traded him to Toronto, and again he never panned out. And I want to say that deal was a deal that they got. They traded Andrew Raycroft for Tuukka Rask. I believe that was the deal. I'd have to confirm that. But I do this all the time where I just go down the rabbit hole of the branch, if you will, of the Bruins. So yeah, Boston Bruins. Yep. So exactly what I thought it was. So the Bruins traded Andrew Raycroft to Toronto for the rights to. He's back.
I'm on my phone.
Oh, there you go. And you're a lot clearer
Really?
too.
All right.
Yeah.
Oh.
Interesting. So basically I was just talking about let me go back here. Just going through some of these goalies, like seeing these names, and I said I could do this all night, but so 0304, Andrew Raycroft comes on the scene. Although he played a couple games. He played a game in 2000, the 2000-2001 season. He played 15 games. I think that was his rookie year. 2.96, 0.89. Went back down. I think they sent it back down. They had Byron Dafoe, John Graham. He came up. He played one game. He's gone again. But yeah, and he's back. So 02-03 played 5 games, so limited. But in 03-04, it was him, Felix Potvin, and Tim Thomas. I don't think Tim Thomas played any games, but he was on the roster. But Andrew Raycroft played 57 games, 2.05 goals against average with a 0.926. Absolutely lights out that year. 04-05 season comes. We have the lockout. Now that's when players could have gone and played anywhere. They could have signed contracts. A lot of them went over to Europe. A lot of them played up in Canada. A lot of them just played and continued to skate. I'm fairly certain I recall Andrew Raycroft decided he wasn't doing anything, and he didn't play at all. The next season, they come out of the lockout, and Andrew Raycroft starts 30 games. His goals against average is 3.71. His save percentage is 0.879. So the next season, Kevin, so goals against average was 3.71, 0.879 in 30 games. He opened the door for Tim Thomas that 05-06 season. Thomas played 38 games, 2.77 with a 0.917. They turn around.
No, I'm sorry. During the
Yeah.
lockout year of 04,
Yeah, he played. He
05, I
played
think Tim
30,
Thomas was the play.
38 games
Maybe he played in
for the Bruins.
Providence or Sweden. Yeah, he played. I'm almost
He
positive
played.
somewhere.
He played in Providence. He definitely played. So I just looked up the deal. So the Bruins, 2006, they traded Andrew Raycroft to Toronto for the rights to the Leafs goalie prospect Tuukka Rask. Raycroft had won the Calder Trophy. The Calder Trophy in 04 when he was 29, 18, and 9 with a goals against average of 2.05. Last season, the 26-year-old played poorly to start the season, then was hampered by a right knee injury and had a 8, 19, and 2 record with a 3.72 goals against average. The emergence of rookie Hannu Toivonen in the play of Tim Thomas last year made Raycroft expendable. And they traded him for basically straight up for Tuukka Rask. Tuukka Rask was still, I think he was still, they basically had drafted him. He was playing over in
only 20 years old.
Finland,
right?
still. Was it Finland? Finland.
Yeah.
Yeah. So he was still playing. I think he was
correct,
not even. I think because he was still. He was still playing in the junior championship when the Bruins had his rights. So I love doing that. I love doing this. The whole like branch thing where but that one stuck out in my mind because he was lights out. I remember him winning the Rookie of the Year, and then it was like the lockout, and he did nothing, and then it was like, oh my God, he sucks now. And that's why I said, like, for a kid like Swayman, same age, for him to potentially get into a position where he's not playing at all would be career suicide. And I would just look to, and they say that injury very well could have happened because he just didn't play. At a level that he needed to, right? I'm sure he skated. I'm sure he, took some shots, but he wasn't playing with NHL caliber players on a regular basis, no matter where it was. So interesting. So we'll see what happens with that. Kevin is in and out tonight, which is fine. This is why we do the podcast. So he's back.
It's weird. The phone just kicks me off and kicks me right back on. It's something to do with the app on the phone. It would prefer me to be on the desktop. I would prefer to be on the desktop.
Gotcha.
But the phone just keeps kicking me off, and then
the picture is a lot clearer. You got like HD or something.
Go to a different part of the house.
But anyway,
in different weeks and try different things. Yeah.
Yeah, we'll try it. So Bruins preseason, they are, Kevin, you are right. I actually did confirm that they are 2-2-1 currently after last night's game. Last night they did play Philly. They beat them 4-1. They outshot the Flyers 34-14 on the night. I didn't see the game myself. They did score. It was 1-1. They scored 3 goals in the third, 2 of them which were empty nets. Goals. It was more of an NHL roster. Obviously, they've sent a bunch of players down. Saturday, they sent down a slew of players to Providence, which included Georgy Merkulov, who is I'm high on him, the Russian kid who played at Ohio State. I think he was an undrafted free agent that they signed 2 years ago. And then obviously Fabian Lysell, who I think had a decent preseason. I think we'll see him at some point. He'll be up.
That's the guy they're really looking for to make a jump this year, I believe.
Yeah, he needs to. Obviously, Riley Duran, the 2 Providence College kids, Duran and Callahan, both sent down to Providence.
Yeah.
And that's fine. They still need time to develop. Last night, goal scorers Justin Brazeau, Tyler Johnson, who's here on a PTO. I think they're gonna lock him up. I think he makes the team. Charlie Coyle had an empty netter in Mark Kostelik. He's the other player they got in that deal for Allmark from Ottawa. He's basically a fourth line. Although I don't know where he was playing last night, but I believe it was a fourth line. He's a big kid, fourth line. Him, Brazeau, and I think Frederick were maybe there was a third line because I think they have Frederick playing up. But Pasternak played. Marchand was back. He played a period. I think he was under the weather. And then Elias Lindholm was finally in uniform last night. Now we know why he missed most of the preseason. His wife
Yep.
gave birth to their child, so completely, obviously, we understand that. But they looked good. The power, I think it was a power play goal I saw. It was a great setup. Pasternak to Zaka across to Tyler Johnson, who kind of like took
Right.
that quick wrist shot down low. Similarly
Yep.
to Pasta on that other side, but it was a nice goal. I could see him
Yeah,
fitting
I
in.
watched
So
I watched the first two
we'll see what happens.
periods. I thought they played pretty
Yeah, go ahead.
strong in the first two periods. It was tied 1-1. They definitely outplayed Philadelphia. Um, I'm not that high on Bussy, but I think he's done enough to earn the backup to Corpusalo. That's fine with me. Did they send DiPietro back down to Providence yet? Not yet. And they signed Yuri
Not yet.
Patera. Yep.
DiPietro backed up last night, but he didn't get in. Bussy played the whole game. Only faced 14 shots, so he made 13 saves. I thought Corpusalo looked fairly good in that game that he played the whole game. So he's a big guy. So, and again, I think they're built. Their back end is. I mean, they're solid. So I'm excited for. I am excited for their season. Obviously, they had Swayman there. I'd be happy to have both those guys. Although I think,
Yeah.
again, whatever. I think it's a lot to pay for a goalie
Well, I
tandem,
mean, in a month ago, we're
but
hoping
I
for
think
60 games, 55 to 60 games out of Swayman, and 25 to 30 out of Corpusalo, and I think everybody would have been happy. And Swayman would have been your goalie going into the playoffs, and then we see what happens there to see if he truly is year one. Does he take it all the way through to the playoffs? At least get to the Eastern Conference Finals. The next step. Now everything's kind of flipped. Now, all right,
yep,
Corpusalo, he's the guy that's going to be at least averaging 50 to 55 games a year on the season until they make a decision on Swayman. Bussy's going to be his backup. I think you're looking at 3 out of every 5 games, 4 out of every 5 games. Right now, to start the year is Corpusalo, and back-to-back nights will be Bussy, and and the spots start here and there when they play like in Ottawa or a team that's not very good. So I think Corpusalo's gonna be a lot on Corpusalo's plate.
yeah.
But
Hey, we'll see what happens. That the first 10 games, they
okay.
go 7-3. They go 3-7. Then obviously Raycroft. Jesus,
Right.
This is the third time tonight.
Right.
Swayman has
Yep.
all the leverage.
And maybe
Then
the
they go
defense is a
7-3.
little bit
It's
more
like, hey, you
focused
know
in
what?
front of
We
them,
can
and
win with
maybe
this guy.
they commit their position
Good luck.
that much better,
Um,
knowing that they don't have a
so
Vezina quality goalie behind them, and the whole team works better.
Yep.
I mean, I'll be optimistic. I'm not happy with the way Swayman and his agent. I'm not saying anything that hasn't been said throughout New England this last 2 or 3 weeks, especially. But I agree. I think I don't think Swayman has this thing measured all the way through, especially
right.
being a restricted free agent. Go ahead, hold out. Bruins still hold your rights, and now you are 60 days away from potentially. I still think this is a long shot, but you're potentially 60 days away from not playing again in the NHL until October of 2025.
Yeah.
And not getting paid. He's not going to get paid. No, he's technically not
Yeah.
under
I forget.
contract.
In not getting paid this year. Like that's not. They don't have to. They wouldn't have to pay him. So I forget who it was. I was listening to someone this morning who said, like, are you going to let $1 million, maybe it's $1 million difference over the course of 8 years, over the, affect you, to not, now you're not making anything. Anyway, so, they have, they got the LA Kings tomorrow
Yep.
night. I think they're in LA, or I'm assuming they're in LA or some neutral
I
site.
bet
But
there's some
and then they
neutral
wrap
site.
up the preseason against
I'm
Washington
gonna
on
go with a neutral
Saturday.
site tomorrow, just because. Yeah,
Maybe.
it does say neutral site. I don't
Yeah,
know where, though.
I'd find it hard to
Yeah,
believe they
it
fly all
doesn't.
the way to the
It
West
doesn't
Coast
say
for a
where, but because the
preseason.
Kings are flying.
Okay, so yeah, Neutral site. I would find it hard that they'd fly all the way to LA for a preseason game. Yeah. And then they got Washington on Saturday. They're preseason. And then they open up against Florida, the defending Stanley Cup champions, on Tuesday night, October 8th. My assumption is that's a banner-raising night, which sucks as a Bruins fan to have to watch that. And maybe they won't show it. I'm assuming that game will be on Nesson. And so, it'll suck to have to watch them raise the banner while we're there. But, it is what it is. They did claim. Did we already talk about this? They claimed a goalie off waivers today from Vancouver, Yuri Patera, who I think he was drafted by Vegas. He's played mostly in the AHL. Okay stats. I think he's had a cup of tea
Pat,
with Vegas while he was in
what
there when they went through a slew of goalies at one point.
The Kings against the
Bruins.
being played in Quebec City.
I think
at the Videotron Center in Quebec. Yeah.
Where?
Future home of the North. I always call them the Nordic U's.
No kidding.
So I mean, geez, yeah.
The Nordics, the Nordics.
Kings are flying across the country. I mean,
the former home of the Avalanche
on the East Coast or something,
right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
They must open up on the East Coast then. Yeah, I would imagine.
Yeah. At home.
All right, so we covered the Bruins. Patriots. They got. Let's see, they got Miami coming up, right? I don't even know. The game was brutal. When all you can talk about is a 63-yard field goal as a highlight, it's tough. They lose Andrews, their center, captain of the team, captain of the offense. He's out for the season. He's having season-ending and most likely career-ending surgery. Unfortunately, I know he was like kind of on the. He was back and forth on whether he was coming back this year anyway. No, he did come back, and to have an injury like this now, season ending. My opinion is his career is probably over. He's not going to make it back, and just from some of the comments that were made today, right? I didn't listen, but I heard some pieces of the where Mayo said it's unfortunate, captain of the team, voice of obviously pivotal for the offensive line, but he'll be around the locker room and probably at some sort of coaching at some point when he's ready. So if that means he's going to be coaching the offensive line,
the worst
I don't know, but they need to do something because the offensive line looked horrendous against San Fran. I mean, it was
under pressure back in 1990.
But
91.
I also question like you're running plays where you're asking basically your thinnest. I don't know, Thornton. I don't know how much Thornton weighs, but he looks like he weighs like $120, and they're asking him to come in and block like a edge runner, an edge rusher who basically like went right through him. I mean, honestly, like at that point, I'm like, everyone's calling for Drake May, but I'm like, you're gonna get this kid killed. And I guess that's not the answer. Like, oh, don't play him, right? Don't play him because he's gonna get hurt. It's like, well, I don't know. It's tough to watch, unfortunately. And it's interesting because you see these teams like, although Washington has been in the bottom of the barrel for several years now. So they've obviously they picked a quarterback that I think most
there are a couple extra years.
Scouts and most ESPN talking heads said was the most
22-year-olds, 23
pro ready
with the
out
COVID
of
rules,
outside of. I mean, I think a lot of people were high on Williams being ready, although I didn't.
But overall,
most people thought that Daniels was the most pro ready out of all of them. I mean, he's like
going into the
26, isn't he, or
NFL
25?
against the
So
best of the best, who are now pro ready and more than capable, veterans that have been
no,
out there for years. And yeah, it's a different.
yeah. So they've, on top of losing, Andrews, I think they lose Duggars. It doesn't look to be as severe of an injury as I initially thought, but he's probably going to miss a game or two. So they're hurt, and their offensive line is just I don't know where they go, but they didn't look good. So they got to shore that up. So they got Miami, and Miami hasn't looked. They've looked terrible since Tua went down. Anyway,
Back, I think.
and he's back, kinda. No picture.
Here I can't hear you.
You can't hear me? Can you hear me now? I can hear you.
Can you hear me? No, you can.
I can hear you. Yeah.
I can.
Yeah.
I don't know.
I can hear you perfectly.
We try the old school way. We go back in the other way. Yeah, we got to work out these kinks.
All right.
I got to work out my kinks. This is my end again. Holy cow! This is
We'll figure. We're going
not
to.
not
We'll
good,
get.
as they
We must
say.
know
I can't even
someone
get
who's an
in right
IT
now.
guy.
Oh my gosh!
Um.
Let me try and get in through the computer. I'll be
What
right
else?
back.
Rhode Island FC. Yeah, you do your thing. I'm gonna keep talking. Rhode Island FC won last Saturday. They beat San Antonio 3-1. So they've inched closer. They're still sitting in sixth currently in the USL. So they are. Let's see. They are sitting in sixth. Actually tied. Yeah, they're sitting in sixth. Tied in points with Indy 11, who have the goal differential. Basically, they're an even 43 goals for, 43 goals against. Indy is, and the Rhode Island uh, is is +6. Um, oh, actually, Indy 11 is, they've played one less game, so that's why they're ahead of them. Rhode Island has a goal differential locked up, but Indy 11 has a game in hand. They let's see, they do play. I think this weekend they play Saturday against Tampa Bay Rowdies. And then the Revolution won Saturday night, and they're actually playing right now. I think it's halftime. They're down in Houston. They have to win out, and they need some help to get in. I think it's probably very slim chance that they make it into the playoffs, but they won Saturday night. It's 0-0 right now at the half against. They're down in Houston. They still have a couple games left. They play Saturday night at home against DC United, and I think they got 2 games on the road. They finish up against. They got Columbus and they got Miami, into Miami. So 2 tough games. I don't mathematically they're still in the equation, but I don't think it happens. But RIFC is definitely. I mean, they're sitting in 6th right now, so they should make it in. They still got to play Miami, who is the last place team in the league, and they have a couple other games left. So I
They have
think they'll make it. Can you hear me?
4 games left. Three of them at home. RIFC.
Yep, yep, yep. And they won
Oh.
Saturday night 3-1, which is it was a great game. I watched it. So yeah, so they're back at it. I think they're away against Tampa Bay Saturday, and then they finish. At home. Oh, wait a minute. Yeah, they finish at home. I know they have Miami coming up. I can't pull up their schedule for some reason. And then Celtics. I think the Celtics. I think they leave to head to Dubai. They
Abu
open up
Dhabi
their
or something like
preseason in
that.
Dubai. So it'd be interesting to see what happens with them coming into the season, defending world champions. It'll be exciting to see how things play out for them. I would expect nothing but playoffs and nothing but a Eastern Conference championship final, and then potentially another NBA final run. So we did make the name change. It's something that we've been kicking around for a while. Kevin started the show back in, I want to say, mid-May, and we can confirm that if he gets back on. And he did several weeks by himself, and then had asked me at one point if I'd be interested in joining him, and I kind of was like, yeah, it's kind of like my thing. So, I jumped on. I think my first show was the first. Actually, it might have been the last Saturday in June. And we've hit the ground running. I think we work well off of each other. It's been a learning experience. It's new to me. It's new to him. Being inside the studio and kind of running that. This isn't like EEI or some of the other big stations where they got their own multiple producers behind them and pushing all the buttons, and that's really Kevin's doing that. And we're learning as we go, and so at some point it was like, well, I'm doing this. I'm in for the long haul, and I made a commitment to Kevin, and even if I'm traveling where I'm calling in or I'm able to whatever, and then we decided we do the podcast thing midweek and kind of dabble a little bit, and so we were kicking around the name thing, and we can't, we kind of dabble with a few different things, and obviously, the station owner is the one who had suggested something different, and so we came up with the cheap seats, and Kevin has been teasing it, I think, the last couple of weeks. Hey, here we are live from the cheap seats. So we that stuck, and so we'll be known as it'll be the cheap seats with Pat and Kevin moving forward, and that's on the radio, on the podcast, and we'll, I think I've updated a lot of the social media stuff, and so like, subscribe. We have our YouTube channel as well, so subscribe to that, and we're uploading the podcast there every week. You can find it on Spotify, I think Apple Podcast. It's on Podcastle, which is the platform that we've been using to create it. So like, share, social, Facebook is, you can search for the cheap seats with Pat and Kevin. Please like it, share it. Again, we get tremendous sponsors currently that are supporting the radio show, and we're looking to potentially move that to a 2-hour block. So we're looking for more sponsors, maybe a presenting sponsor for each hour, which would be great. And then we can do 2 hours. An hour is great, but it does go by quick. So we're not really able to cover as much content as we want to, especially if we have a guest on, which we've been lucky enough to have several of the local sports writers on. Tyler Helu was one of them. He's been on twice. We've had we've done the interviews with some of the local high school head coaches. We've had some of the athletic directors on. We had some of the callers that are calling in our weekly usual, the Moose Man, who's called in to talk Red Sox baseball for several weeks, so which is all great, but it does cut into that open time where we're able to cover more content. So that's kind of why we started the podcast thing. And I think, it's been pretty good thus far. We're able to cover things in more detail, especially like the Bruins preseason and the Raycroft stuff and Raycroft. I just did it again. The Swayman stuff. And then, anything else. It's more of a just back and forth, open banter. Kevin and I talk a lot, and, I'm over there not every Thursday night, but every couple Thursdays. We have the hockey night in Attleboro. A group of guys have been getting together for 15 to 20 years, and I was lucky enough to get invited over a few years back, and so it's a good group of guys. We get over there. We watch whatever's on, sports and anything. And believe me, we've been there nights where we're watching crazy sports, especially during COVID. It was fun. We were watching Australian rules football, whatever was on. College baseball, softball, anything that's on, we'll watch it. I think we got 3 TVs set up over there, so it's fun. It's a good group of guys, a lot of banter back and forth, and we hope to bring that type of atmosphere to the podcast, banter, and even to the radio show. So I know a lot of my buddies have been listening in, and I appreciate that. And a lot of them say, hey, you haven't really come out of your show yet. And so hopefully the next few weeks we'll get that back and forth going. And so I enjoy this. I'm a stats guy. I love, looking into the stats side of thing. And like I said, like tonight, we just kind of went down that rabbit hole of seeing what how things lead to this guy got traded and what did he get back, and those guys turned into this and that, and you look over like 5 years and it's like, and then they moved that guy and he turned into these 2 draft picks, and so I love that stuff. So I am going to I guess sign out. Kevin didn't make it back on. He had some technical difficulties tonight. We'll try to work those out. But appreciate everyone. Hopefully you like the content. Again, if you do, please like, share, subscribe, all of our platforms, the podcast, again, Spotify, Apple Podcasts. We're on Podcastle, YouTube channel. Like and subscribe it. You can search YouTube for the Cheap Seats with Pat and Kevin. It should be up there. Episode 4 will get up there at some point tonight. Like them, watch them, subscribe to the channel. You'll get updates. And then obviously tune in every Saturday morning at 9 a.m. WOON 99.5, 1240 FM, 99.5 FM, 1240 AM, winsoccerradio.com. You can follow that Facebook page for our live stream on Saturday morning. Usually we try to share that probably 5 minutes or as we go live. I typically send that out via social media, just so you click on the link, watch the show live, or check it out later on in the week. We've getting tremendous support out of that. We've grown week over week over week. There was 1 week where it wasn't streamed live because the station had some other stuff going on, but our viewership has gone up substantially week over week over week. I think we're up, well over 600 views every week now, which is fantastic. So we appreciate your support. Tune in weekly. This will be Wednesday nights. The Cheap Seats with Pat and Kevin podcast, and then again Saturday mornings 9 a.m. to 10 a.m. currently on WOON 99.5 FM, 1240 a.m. winsoccerradio.com. Have a great night, Kevin. We'll figure this out.